go.
Hey, welcome to Bring on the Sabbath. Glad to have everyone joining us out there this evening. With me this evening is Wes Higgins, who you'll learn a little bit more about in just a moment, and Wynn Skelton. Glad to have y'all here tonight.
Hi, everybody.
Good to have you. Good to have you. I want to talk a little bit about what we're all about here on BOTS. Bring on the Sabbath. We are here to provide you a service on this evening as we bring on the Sabbath. I think sundown's probably around 8:15 or so here, and we're wherever you're at watching. I know we have people watching all around the world, Australia, the Middle East, out in Asia. We have people watching everywhere. So Oregon as well. Yeah, we have Oregon. Everywhere, everyone who's watching, we are glad to have you join us and be a part of your Sabbath if it's already started, or help you as we're doing right now. We're bringing on the Sabbath here. Hopefully by the end of this, the Sabbath will have begun here in Tyler, Texas. So thank you again for joining us. First thing we want to talk about is our feast sites, and I think Wynn's going to talk about the feast site in Wagner that he's a part of.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yes, we want to encourage everybody that would like a millennial setting kind of feast, then Wagner, Oklahoma is the feast site for you at Sequoia State Park. Beautiful setting, a lake that surrounds, there's a point where the lodge is and where cabins are, and then there's a lake that wraps around.
Wow.
Lake Fort Gibson, just very, very beautiful place. Usually we have 150 to 175 brethren that join us for the feast there from various groups. There's a lot of independent groups, which CGI is all about supporting and building relationships with the independent groups, because guess what? We're all one body, the body of Christ, just one body. So it is one of the I think for us the only feast site that we would consider a millennial setting, which means if you want to go to town, you have to take a trip. I mean, we are really secluded. If you want to.
So how far away from town is it?
It's about 10 miles.
10 miles? Well, it's not so bad.
It's not too bad. So you can go in and go to eat dinner in there if you'd like. But not saying that you don't eat where we are. I'm just saying that there's a restaurant in the lodge, and then a lot of brethren bring their own food. So, and then what you want to do is join up with all of those that are staying in the cabins that have the outdoor grills and things like that. So that anyway, it's a very family atmosphere, and it is one where we make all of our own activities, and we have just ice cream socials and fun show and cookouts, and if you want to get up in the morning and go hiking and walking, just beautiful walking trails. It's a great feast site.
All right, yeah, that definitely sounds really, really, really great. I've not been there. I get the only feast site I've not been to, so maybe
we'll have to make sure you get there this year.
But it sounds like a wonderful place. We had a video we actually showed a few weeks ago where we had like some highlights where you had the Super Sabbath weekend at the same location. And we're putting together a little commercial. Probably next time we air it, we'll show a little bit more about the location, because we want to let people to know that live around it about this beautiful feast site we have there. And we also have feast sites. Where we have feast sites: Myrtle Beach,
Land Between the Lakes, Kentucky, St. Petersburg, Collingwood, Canada. Yep.
And the one in Destin, or around Destin.
Yeah, we have the joint feast there. Site. Common Faith
Networks.
Yes.
If you're interested in joining us for a feast at any of these feast sites, you can go to our website. If you're there right now, there's a FOT on the top of the website. Go there, click on FOT, and you'll get all the information about these different feast sites that we have. Our upcoming schedule that we have here on our webcast network. If you're watching on our webcast network, we actually have 2 channels now. You're watching channel 1, hopefully on Roku, watching on YouTube, Facebook, or on our website. We thank you for watching on that channel. Coming up this week, tomorrow we have Wes Higgins speaking. You're speaking tomorrow.
Yep.
What are you going to speak on tomorrow?
It's still up in the air.
Still up in the air. Okay, that's the title. The title is Still Up in the Air, I guess.
That is a great title. That is a great title.
So
I think I've been there on that title before.
So we definitely look forward to hearing from him tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Later on the week, on Wednesdays, we have at 6:30, Adrian Davis, who was with us last week, does a really wonderful Bible study. You can tune in.
Yep.
He's going through the book of Luke. And that Bible study is Luke, the Good News, the Kingdom of God, 6:30 Central Time, right here on this channel on our webcast network. Then next week, next week we have our Sabbath service again, which is we normally have every time at 11 o'clock. But we also have a special event. It's our Family PEP. So Family PEP is June 3rd at 2 p.m. Central Time. You can watch it right here on this channel. So you can watch our Sabbath service. We'll have our potluck. You can eat your lunch or whatever to come back and join us. Family PEP was designed with the young people in mind, the teenagers and younger children. We have praise music, and most of the young people participate in the praise music. And then we have a Bible study aimed at young people, but definitely interesting for anyone else who may be out there watching, hopefully. And you can also interact with us like we do here a little bit and make comments. And maybe if you have young people at home who want to participate, have them watch as well with a Family PEP. And we have our schedule, when? For bot schedule.
Yes, our next bot schedule will be in 2 weeks, June the 9th. And it will be right here we don't know who will be joining Lisa and myself, because I think you're going to be behind the camera.
Yeah, in a couple of weeks. I get the wonderful break of producing. Wesley's going to be gone for a couple of weeks, so I get to produce in a couple of weeks. So I know we got Wynn, I know we have Lisa, and we'll have someone else hopefully lined up as well for that in 2 weeks. And we're going to try for 3 weeks in a row like we did. We just completed 3 weeks in a row. Isn't that amazing?
This is it.
So hey, that's a lot of work goes into these programs, and we thank you for spending your time and watching what we put together here. This is the last time I'm going to announce this on here is the Ignite Summer Camp. So summer camp is July 3rd through 7th. It's $180. Reason this is the last time I'm going to announce it here is that June 1st is the deadline for enrolling. So if you've been thinking about camp, you have children who have camped, have been thinking about sending them to camp, or if you want to support somebody for camp, June 1st is the deadline for enrollment. And then the website cgi.org/camp. You can get there if you're watching on the website right now. It's right underneath the window. Or you can find it on the home page. And we're going to have great activities: paintball, shooting 22s, archery, swimming, water slides, zip line, interactive Bible study, and we're also going to have a filmmaking project for all the young folks there. Just going to make projects while they're there, some filmmaking stuff that we can show right here on bots. So that's going to, whatever they put together, we're going to debut it on bots, and you can see some of the creativity we have in the young folks at our camp. Yeah. So this is the last week that we're going to announce this, because registration ends June 1st. So if you have somebody interested, definitely time to register.
Hey Jeff,
yes.
And we want to thank all of those that have sent in contributions.
Yeah, actually, we've had people who've contributed to it
to help those that cannot afford it.
And we thank everyone who's done that.
Much.
Yes, it's very, 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 very appreciated, because it's going to be a fun time, and we hopefully will be able to share that with you through that project we have for camp, because we're all family, and we all want to support each other in the things we're doing here. Yep. So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back in a moment with some of your comments.
Hi, we'd like to offer you 2 booklets on today's program. We want to offer you, Is Jesus Really God? There's a lot of controversy about who and what Jesus was. We also want to offer you, What is God? Of all the theological questions that evoke controversy in the ancient church, the question of who and what God was one of the major questions. It's even a major question today. You can order by visiting our website, www.cgi.org. That's www.cgi.org.
Hey, we're back here. I'm going to read some comments that we've gotten in. We have Lisa McComb is watching. She's not actually.
Hey,
notice Lisa's not here with us today. She's taking a day off from Bring on the Sabbath, but she will be here next time. So if you like seeing her on the program, she will be here when we come back in 2 weeks. So Lisa's out there. She says, thanks for holding down the fort, Jeff Wynn and Mr. Higgins. Amy Hohert says, I appreciate everyone who worked behind the scenes and in front of the camera to make bots possible for us all. And Holly Flores says hello and happy Sabbath. I'm reading that from Facebook. Holly. And right there I'm doing double duty here looking at these comments. We have
multitasking.
Jarek says happy Sabbath, I guess, to different folks. Let's see. Marty says welcome Wes, happy Sabbath. And let's see, Sister Love says happy Sabbath. A lot of happy Sabbaths out there. Mimi says hello and hugs to all. Definitely hugs back to Mimi. The Lumberjack. Okay, Lumberjack out there says, happy Sabbath to all. And so we thank you for joining us this evening out there. If you have any comments or want to put a shout out, definitely the best place right now today is probably on our website, but I'm going to check the Facebook as well and our YouTube. It's kind of going back between 3 different spots. Hank Green on there says, happy Sabbath from Hank, Mary, and Cody. So happy Sabbath from them.
Hey, guys.
All right, so I think Wynn has something for us now.
Yes. For this evening, what I'd like to do is I would like for all of us, all of you, to get to know this man a little bit better, Wes Higgins. Wes and I have been associated and acquainted for several years through his calling to CGI, and then for me actually getting to travel up to the feast site that they have up in McCall, Idaho, and have really fallen in love with the family and all that Celebration Church of God stands for, that he is the pastor of. And so I thought for the next few minutes, if we could ask some, I'm going to ask some questions and let all of you get to know him in the way that, and come to love him like I love him as a man and as a pastor in God's church. So you are the pastor of Celebration Church of God,
Church
correct?
of God, Ontario, Oregon.
Okay, where is Ontario?
It's on the eastern side of Oregon, right along the Snake River. It's on Highway Interstate 84, and so when you're traveling Interstate 84, you go right through Ontario.
Okay, so it's west of Boise.
Yeah, it's west of Boise, about 50 miles west of Boise.
So that tells you how close Boise is to the Oregon border, correct?
Yeah, and it's just, the river separates it. Ontario's on one side. I actually live in Weiser, Idaho, which is a little north and a little east.
You said, what is it called again?
Weiser.
Weiser, okay.
You might want to spell it for him.
Yeah, Weiser. It's spelled Weiser, but it's pronounced,
Weiser.
I guaranteed pronounced Weiser.
Great. Can you let us know how long you've been, maybe talk about how long you've been the pastor of the Celebration Church of God, and tell us a little bit about how the church got started there in Ontario?
Yeah, I've been pastoring the Ontario Church since 1997. I was ordained as a pastor there. I had been an elder there before that, but it started, of course, under Worldwide Church of God, and we took the new name about that time, Celebration Church of God, and we stayed in the Worldwide Church of God Association until 2005. At which time...
what separated that? What was the separation?
Yeah, the point being that I was not following it as well as following their change as well as they wanted me to follow it. And so they decided they'd bring in another pastor and replace me. And but the congregation, when they were told, they decided no, they did not want a different pastor. They wanted me as pastor. It was 100% unanimous, and each individual had to call and talk to the district superintendent and tell them what they wanted. So we, at that point, parted as a church from Worldwide, but we parted on a very good circumstances. We were considered a sister church to Worldwide, and they gave us anything that, any property, they gave it to us, and they even offered us legal help to be separated. So it was a very good separation.
That of course is unusual and a real blessing for sure. How did the congregation? How so it started in '97 and has been continuous.
Well, no, it actually started in 79.
Okay.
I mean, excuse me, 73.
Okay.
We started as a Bible study in 1973, so we're in about our 43rd year.
Great. Okay.
And
So you're married.
yeah,
Okay.
lovely wife, Lavina.
Can you maybe let us know how your family is involved and how all of that is
Yeah, I have
wonderfully taking place?
Several of my children are involved. We have a band, and we have very, very lively music. The band consists of primarily my family and grandchildren.
Okay, let me interrupt because I got to tell you this. The first time I went up there for the feast, when the band got up, there were more people in the band than there were of us sitting out there. So it's so cool to see all the family involved. So.
Yeah, they're very talented. My son writes some of our music, and couple of my granddaughters has written some of our music.
Yeah.
And so yeah, very talented. Guitar, banjos, pianos, you name it, they play them. Flutes.
And a son-in-law that plays drums.
Yep, son-in-law plays drums.
Yes.
Daughter-in-law that plays the flute. And they're all doing very well.
Very uplifting music too, by the way.
Yeah, we enjoy it very much.
Okay.
One of my granddaughters is actually taking over the youth class now, teaching the youth class, because we had got to the point where all we had was teenagers, and now we've had a new family come in with a bunch of younger kids, and so we wanted to start working with them, and none of the adults were willing to step up. They didn't feel it was in their position this time, so some of our younger people stepped up.
Isn't that what we're wanting in the church anyway, is to have more of the youth involved?
Yep. That's been one of our very primary goals, was to make sure that the young people knew that this was their church. So they have decision making in the church, and they have a very active part in the church.
Yeah, that's great. Can you would you mind talking a little bit about your feast that
Feast
you
in
host?
McCall, Idaho. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
We started the feast there in 2004, I believe it was. And for several years we've had, when we first started, we had quite a few attendants. We're now down to a smaller feast site. But McCall is a very beautiful place. Big mountain lake. We're about 5,000 feet up in the mountains. If you ever went to Squaw Valley, it would remind you of the location there.
Wow.
Very much.
Just very beautiful. It is a family and fellowship-oriented feast. There's not any big major, amusement sites or anything like that, but there's a lot of good hiking trails, biking trails. It's just a very beautiful place.
It is a beautiful place in Long Valley and up there.
Just all very lovely. It's about 80 miles north of, 80 to 100 miles north of Boise, about a 2-hour drive out of Boise.
And you come out of Boise at what, 2,500 feet elevation,
Yeah.
and you climb up to what is it, about 5,000
Yeah, about
probably
5,000,
right there.
yep.
So
And,
it very much does remind me of Squaw Valley, very, very much that way.
And a very beautiful scenery driving up too, if you love rivers.
So CGI is very much involved, is going to be involved this year, I think, with the feast in that there are quite a few CGI brethren that are going to be making that trip out to McCall for the feast, and we're wanting to invite as many of you that would like to come on to this beautiful site and to come join everybody for the feast there. It's you keep it in the Hunt Lodge.
Yes, it's a beautiful lodge, very nice accommodations, very reasonable for what it is, and very, very good location. And we have enjoyed, over the last few years, having CGI sending in speakers over the time, and it's been very good. We enjoyed that.
Yep, I call it the Cowboy Feast site.
Cowboy Feast.
The Cowboy Feast site.
You say lodge, is it like kind of what I imagine a lodge to be?
Well, yeah, it's a little fancier.
Fancier than that,
Yeah.
really.
Very
So,
beautiful.
yeah, very beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes, yep, very gorgeous. You are one of the things that I have come to know about you over the years and in our discussions, sitting in your living room and sitting at church, is your involvement in the community.
Yeah.
And the things that you're able to do there, and we are supposed to let our light shine. That's one of the commands, right?
Yes, it is.
And can you just discuss some of the things that you're able to do in that way, please?
One of the first things I started doing in the community, actively in the community, was member of Chamber of Commerce, being on their board for about 10 years, able to do some active things in getting new lighting in town and whatnot. We were very active in that, and that went on to being a member of the museum, what we call the Snake River Heritage Center. I am now currently the president of that and have been with that for quite a while. And we've taken an old building and we've completely revamped it, and it's one of the better museums, I would say, in Idaho.
You know what? If I would have known all this before you came, I would have asked you to bring pictures. 'Cause I'd like to see all this.
Oh, yes.
It sounds like amazing stuff there.
Yep, and then of course then other ways I'm involved. I do an article for the paper on their religious page. And,
How often?
Once a month. We write. They take turns writing for it, and that's always been interesting. Sometimes I get some interesting reactions from it. We've had actual people come to church because of it. One of the recent ones was on why I love the Sabbath. And that was primarily in counter to one of my fellow writers, why he loves Sunday. So I took time to write why I love the Sabbath. And I've written about the holy days, and I've, a lot of comments around that. So it's been working real well.
So why don't you mention too about your relationship? Now this is really great with some of the pastors in your local
Yes.
community and surrounding towns.
Yeah, I am in association with 3 different pastor groups, and one of them in Ontario, and it's primarily a group that gets together and prays together, and we fellowship as well. But I think it's important to build the relationships with the local community, building that so that they don't look at me, like I'm a piranha, like.
Yeah. So that they know you're a Christian,
Yeah,
right?
they know I'm Christian.
So that works?
It works real, very well. When we first started, they were a little standoffish. But over the years, one group, we just had breakfast together. We just get together and laugh and joke.
So your church and their
tell
church?
stories. What's that?
Your church and their church?
No, just the
No,
pastors.
just the
pastors.
pastors.
Okay.
This is just pastors groups.
Okay.
And then another one I'm joined. We read a book together and we discuss the book. And sometimes, like for instance, just this last time, one of them brought up the question. They know I keep with the holy days. They've learned all these things over the years, and it's not strange to them anymore. And one of them brought up the question: why was Jesus crucified on Passover and not one of the other holy days? So I had the opportunity to explain to them that Passover is the beginning of the holy day season. It's the beginning of God's plan, and I explained the whole thing to them. And a few years ago, they would go, now they just accept it.
Did you explain to them the timing from the Wednesday to Saturday?
I didn't get into that,
Okay.
but I have in the past.
Yeah, okay.
I have in the past. And one time here recently, they were discussing the Feast of Tabernacle, and one of them said, well, you're going to have to lead the way because you understand that we don't. So,
That's great.
so yeah, it's been very interesting. It's been a good building relationship for everyone. And they've accepted our church, and
You've actually given validity to the truth.
Yeah. Yep.
Through that, and it's the way that you work with them in a collegial, peaceful.
Right. Yeah. We don't go in
Right.
there with a condemning attitude, and
Right.
and
We shouldn't be condemning anybody.
Yeah.
Right. We should be lights and great examples. So that's really great. You want to talk about what Wade does with the Gideons?
okay. Yeah, Wade, my son, he's been here before as well. He joined the Gideons. I'm not sure how many years. 8 or 10 years ago, I'm not sure. But again, the same type of situation happened with him. When he first joined the Gideons, he couldn't even talk about going to church on the Sabbath because it was considered, none of them understood it, none of them agreed with it. But now, everybody knows he's a Sabbath keeper. He goes into, like he mentioned last Sunday, he was in a church in a little community up north of us. And they had a potluck, and they said, well, this is food you can eat, and this is food you can't eat. I mean, they've accepted that, and it's not strange. They just accepted that. He's a very good speaker, and he does stand heavily for the Gideons.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And has been a real asset to them, and that has also given him a chance to grow and develop.
And does he also do something with the Daily Bread? Stephen
Yes,
Glover.
yeah, he does that. I don't know, what is that, a weekly or
Weekly,
weekly
yeah.
basis? Yeah.
Stephen
Yeah, he
Glover
gets
has
also-
a daily program where there's a 15-minute Bible study, and what he has been able to do is gather different men from across the country to take different days of the week, of the 7 days, and that continues. And I think Wade is doing it twice a month.
Yeah, I
and
believe
Cecil Green is doing it on Wednesdays, the other 2 days.
Okay.
Now that you mentioned that, you're going to have to give them the phone number for Daily
Okay,
Bread.
I can do that.
You need to give the phone number out for Daily Bread. And for
Okay.
those who don't know,
Yeah.
Stephen Glover is a pastor in Montgomery, Alabama. And he's spoken here in Tyler a couple times before.
Yeah.
So some of y'all may be familiar with him. If you're not, you can search his name on the website and find those sermons he did.
Yes. Now?
Yeah, go ahead and give that number out.
Okay, if you wanted to listen to the Daily Breads, then you would call, and this is going to, if you need a pen, you need to write this, because the number is 1-712-770-4700, 712-770-4700, and then it's going to give you a prompt, and it'll say enter your passcode, and the code number is 112165 #, and that will get you hooked up. And then you're going to have, okay, one more instruction. You're going to have to hit *6 to unmute it. Otherwise, you can listen, but you could not talk. And it is designed, no, that's the Bible study. I'm sorry, I gave the number to the Bible study.
That's the Bible study
That's
number.
the Bible study
Okay, that's the
number.
wrong number, y'all.
Wrong number.
So if you're
Forget
watching out
everything
there,
I just
Now,
said.
if you want to join the Bible study, those are instructions to join his Bible study that he does, I think, on the Sabbath.
Okay,
and
here we
throughout
go.
the week.
So the Daily Bread messages would be 712, again, 770
All right.
4709
4709.
instead of 4700. And you enter that same code, 112165.
Repeat the code a little slower so we can get that on the screen.
112165
112-165.
#. 112165 #. Now, depending on what day that you're listening, and you can listen 7 days a week, you would begin the 7 days of the week. You would just enter then the reference code 567. Excuse me. Sunday being day one, first
Okay.
day of the week. Just follow it that way. So Monday's Tuesday, Monday's 2, Tuesday's 3, Wednesday 4, like that through the week. So 15-minute Bible study, very refreshing. You can hear his son, Wade, doing that, Cecil Green, and then several others from across the country doing that too. Bill Glover out in Oregon, some of the men down in Florida, and also in Atlanta, I believe, too, as well.
Wow, quite a few.
Yeah. So, you want to at this time talk about the new? We wanted to discuss. They've just purchased and bought a new building, and talk about all the years of wandering and
Yeah.
the blessings that have come your way that
Yeah,
way.
well, when we dedicated, talked about the 40 years of wandering in the rental wilderness, and boy, it was a tough job to rent over the years, and being kicked out of one building on a day's notice, or having to let somebody else in. So God has opened the door for us this last year to purchase our own building. And we had prayed about this for a number of years. We had located the area that we wanted to put our building in. We didn't want it, we had been, as a rental, we had been mostly in commercial areas. We wanted to be in a community. So we prayed about, in fact, like I say, the very community we've moved into is the one we were focusing on because it was a community in need. And we desired to take care of that need, to do, God has given us a calling. We are to help the brokenhearted. We're to help the blind, and we're to heal the sick.
Yep.
And so He's given us that opportunity to be in a community to do that. So he opened the door for purchasing this building. It took us several months to actually get it remodeled and suitable. But even in that, the local community has come in and helped us. We had several people coming out of the community. They came in and gave us a hand remodeling, and now those same people are attending church with us. And we're in an area that, just to give you an idea of what the area we're in, it's affectionately, or it depends on how you look at it, called Marijuana Alley. And there is actually marijuana growing in the alley behind, up and down.
Is that legal there?
It's legal now. It
Okay.
wasn't when didn't used to be, but it is legal now. But you'll have the fences, the backyard's all big, tall fences, so you can't see into their yard. But that's the reason. In fact, one of the very next neighbor, one of the first things they did was ask us not to spray our weeds because they grew marijuana organically. So anyway, that is the kind of neighborhood we're in, and there are some challenges to that, but we're very happy to be there.
Over the years that I've been there and attended services, it seems every time that I'm there, you have, especially when you were meeting in the mall, you have had maybe a heart and maybe you can teach us a little bit or discuss with us how we better can reach out to those that are less fortunate, those that are homeless, those that are unchurched, those that need help. How do you seem to have the heart for that, and it is working. Can you discuss that a little bit?
Well, that's something we have been focusing on. It's not just me as the pastor; it's the whole church. Are very welcoming to anybody that comes in through the door. We don't, I remember years ago the first time I walked into Worldwide Church of God, we had a deacon standing at the door, and he would ask you if you were allowed to be there. And, that's silliness. That's not what God does the calling. We're not expecting these people to come in and be part of the church necessarily. That's up to God. But we are required to love our neighbor. We're required to help the community. We're required to heal with the ones we can. We're scattering the seed, and some of it will fall on good ground. Most of it doesn't.
But we can't get discouraged with
Yeah,
that.
we can't
if it does
discourage. No, it's up to God to what He wants to do with the people. But that's part of the challenges. They are. Sometimes very difficult people to work with. We get all kinds. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I can really vouch for that. Watching some of the ones that have come in, a lot of times, and this reminds me actually of what happened to Christ, because you remember the 5,000 He fed. Mm-hmm. They follow Him around for food.
Yep.
And I've watched Him come into your church building and eat food, and you've invited Him to stay for church. And some will.
Yeah, some will.
And some leave.
Yeah.
And some are just there for food, but that's okay, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
It's okay if we just feed them food.
Yeah, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm. Because we just have plant seeds and let God.
Yeah, that area has a lot of homeless people in it, so we kind of expect people to just come in just for food, and that's fine. That's
how many do you feed?
Calling. We don't feed that many really.
Okay.
Occasionally, it varies from time to time, but usually only just a handful at a time will come in. And
but when they come there, they know they're going to be loved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they know they're not going to be pressured.
Yeah, the people are genuinely have a heart for those that come in.
Yeah.
You can see the smiles on their faces, and they're welcoming, handshakes and hugs, and
I think of Jesus Christ's ministry, who, the scribes and the Pharisees were so critical of Him because He sat with sinners and publicans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was because that's who needed help. And He was the physician that could help them. And isn't that really what our heart should be, that same way?
Yeah.
And I know with that, there comes a lot of challenges and a lot of difficulties because we are faced with, I think, in in the world today, in the community, with a lot different problems than America had 40 years ago or 50
Right.
years ago.
Yes.
And you want to discuss a little bit about that? Because-
Yes, not only are most of them unchurched, but they, one of the guys that come in on a regular basis is a gang member, ex-gang member, and he's had to flee from his gang, and he's tried to separate himself from that.
From
One
a
of them-
gang?
Yeah, from a gang, yeah. Yeah, we have gangs.
Like
in the
a
area.
motorcycle gang or
Well,
something like that? Or
yeah,
a gang?
drug gang,
Okay.
yeah.
Like
Most
organized
of them-
crime gang.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of them come in with drug problems, ex-drug addicts, and different things like that. And for the most part, we're comfortable with them because we know we have problems. They have problems.
I mean, we're not perfect?
Yeah, and no, we're not. Definitely not. And it gives us a lot of, I think as time goes on, we're going to, if we want to continue to be a church, we're going to have to face these problems. We're going to have to be able to handle them as different people come in. We have one young lady that has a felon. She has 2 children, one of them in wedlock, one of them out of wedlock. She's now separated. She's been into drugs. As I said, she has a felon. We baptized her last week.
Great.
And she's really trying to make some changes. So, that's her calling. I did 3, what was it? 3 baptism
Counseling?
counseling, yeah. And so far, only one of them has come forward. One of them ran after I talked with him. He didn't want anything to do with it. But, baptism is a covenant, and we have to teach that. And that there are responsibilities for the people as well as for Christ.
Do you have some suggestions for all of us and various congregations, those that would be looking in, as to some of the avenues to look for or in order to be involved in some more of these projects? Because I think what you do is so exemplary. You're not after results of thousands and baptizing. You want to take care of those that God sends you.
Yeah.
And you want to be a good example and love them.
Yeah.
And we don't know if God's going to call them. So we would like to do that, I think, a little bit more. So do you have some suggestions?
I think first of all, locate your church in an area that needs it.
Okay.
You don't just locate it, just convenient for church members. Put it out there because we are all called to be part of this. We're called to be an example to the kingdom, for the kingdom. And so put your churches where they're needed, where in community where they're needed. Prepare yourself to deal with these various problems and difficulties because that's what's out there. We don't have a Christian-based nation anymore. We have a nation that is going all different directions. So we have to deal with that.
Yeah. So you want to explain or tell them about the little problem you had this week at your church building or recently?
Yeah, we did have a vandalism this week, and like I say, we're in a community that we kind of expected that. We got cameras around out, and somebody decided they didn't like the cameras, so they attempted to break them off. And we've got a beautiful photo of him, and so the police know who he is.
The police know who he is. Yeah. He was looking in the camera. So, but those are some of the things you kind of have to expect, right?
We expected that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully we're planning for it and able to handle it.
So I know that most of us are dealing with small congregations. That we are small congregations. Can you give us an idea how big, you?
Yeah.
I know that's always always a rotating number, but revolving number.
We actually have a bigger church attendance now than we have a core group. Our core group, for instance, on the holy days, we're 20 to 25. On the Sabbath, we're 35 to 40. So we're getting a lot more people in on the Sabbath than we are for the holy days.
Interesting.
That's because we have the core group, and then we have the ones coming in that are just learning. And,
Fantastic. Well, this has been very interesting, very helpful, very fun to know. And any other comments that you would like to make?
Well, I just appreciate the opportunity to talk about the things that I think are important.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and
I'm sure people watching really want to hear these things.
Yeah. Things that we need to consider as a church. We're not called to sit back and do nothing. We're called to be representatives of Christ. And Christ loved and dealt with the people.
And we appreciate in CGI the opportunity to work and serve alongside you and with you and with all the brethren up there. And for all those that are watching, we say hello this evening. And for all of you, I hope you've had a little opportunity to get to know Wes and the Celebration Church of God. And if we don't have any other, do you have any comments? Anything
I
that you
just
wanna...
have some people on here just saying Happy Sabbath, and quite a few of those.
Great.
Trudy
Okay.
Cranford, Thomas Chambers, Cindy Hawkins watching on YouTube say Happy Sabbath. And then I saw some folks here watching online who came in a little later. I think William was on there. And I think that's the only ones lately, and they say Happy Sabbath as well. So that's all we have right now.
Okay, good. Well, then at this time, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back from the break, then Wes has a Bible study prepared for us this evening. So at this time, we'll take a break.
Hi, we'd like to offer you a free booklet on today's program. We want to offer you the booklet, Evolution, Fact or Fallacy. No one can deny that our complex universe is an astounding, majestic marvel. But how did it get here? Where did we come from? Does it really matter? Can it be, as so many contend, that this all just happened by some fortuitous cosmic accident? Or did it come about as a result of careful design of an infinite God? Here are the facts you need to know. Get Evolution, Fact or Fallacy. Visit our website, www.cgi.org. That's www.cgi.org.
Once again, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to come here tonight. Of course, I didn't know I was going to be doing a Bible study. That got dropped on me this morning. Kind of, what? Anyway, it's what you get when you get invited to speak, I guess. You get everything thrown at you. I do that when wind comes up our way. I just try to throw everything I can at them. So I guess turnabout's fair play.
Yeah. Paybacks.
Just payback, yep. So my question for you tonight is, do you love me? Not me. I'm talking about what Jesus said. Do you love me? In John chapter 21, and we'll start with verse 3. We'll just talk about this. The disciples, after the resurrection and after seeing Jesus a couple times, they went out and decided to go fishing. And Peter says in verse 3, he says, I am going fishing. And they said to him, we are going with you also. And they went out and immediately got into the boat, and that night they caught nothing. They had decided that it was over. They had decided that their job was done. They spent 3.5 years with Christ. They knew how they was going to learn. And they decided, okay, let's just go fishing. Nothing else to do. It's all over. But Christ had something different for them. And he has something different for us as well. You know the story. Christ was there on the shoreline, and he fixed something for them, and they hadn't caught any fish, so he told them we'll fish on the other side, and they probably thought it was stupid, but they did it anyway, and they caught all the fish, and then one of them, probably John, said something about that it's the Lord, and so then Peter swam to him, and we start the whole conversation. So I want to center down on verse 15, where Jesus said to Peter, he says, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? Now, I first, I see the importance of it. More than who? Who's he talking about? More than who? Well, he's talking about more than going fishing. He's talking about more than doing a job. He's talking about more than the fellows around him. He's talking about more than life activities. He says, do you love me more than these? And of course, he goes down through here. He says that 3 times, and Peter asks him 3 times, and he gets very grieved at the questions. But Peter, of course, says, yes, I do. I love you. You know that I love you. And so we see, there's some question as to why 3 times, perhaps because Peter denied Christ 3 times. That's very possible. But that's not what I want to focus on. I want to focus on, do you love me? Let's go to Luke chapter 14. Luke chapter 14. And we see the question here, we see the example here, let's see, in chapter 14 and verse 26. And if anyone comes to me and does not hate his mother, his father, his mother, his wife, children, brothers, sisters, yes, and even his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. Have you really thought about that? Jesus asks us if we love him. Jesus asked Peter if he loves him. He says, if you do not love me more than anything else in the world, you cannot be my disciples. Yet we call ourselves disciples of Christ. We call ourselves followers of Christ. How much do we love him? How much time do we devote to him? How much time do we vote? We have members who have kept Sabbath for years, yet they go fishing all the time. Okay, we won't say that, you won't say just because you keep the Sabbath you love God, but that just shows something. It's not that we love the Sabbath, it's that we love God, and that God has called us to be there on the Sabbath. So, you miss occasional Sabbath, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you do it as a habit, then maybe you're showing that your love isn't where it should be. Now, verse 33, he says, nevertheless, I must journey, wrong verse, wrong chapter. Where are we? There's 33.
14. 14.
Yep, Luke 14:33. He says, so likewise, whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. So our first commitment, our first calling is to love Jesus Christ with all our heart, with all our mind, with all our soul. And that's just the starting of it. Okay? We are called to love God. 1 Peter chapter 1. I'd like to read to you from there. 1 Peter chapter 1. And starting in verse 6. This is a salutation to the church, salutation to, and Peter here is talking about the incorruptible and undefiled inheritance that we have. And he says in verse 16, in this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold, that perishes, though it be tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ, whom, having not seen, you love. Do we really love Jesus Christ, whom we have not seen? We're tried, as it says, by different problems and difficulties, but we are tried so that we may have a genuine faith and a genuine love for Christ. Sometime throughout our life, each and every one of us is going to be required to answer that question, do you love me? God is going to require that of us. It may be during a trial, it may be during a joyous opportunity of our life, but each one of us is going to have to answer that. And how do we answer that? How does God know that we love him? How do we know we love God? How do we do that? It's natural just as for us to say, yes, I do love you. But is it really from the heart? How do we live our lifestyle? How do we prove it? How do we prove that we love God?
So do you think we're ever going to be faced with questions and challenges and things that will actually challenge whether we'll have to make that choice?
I do. I believe so. I believe each one of us are going to have to make that choice sometime in our life. And
Maybe more than once.
Yeah, maybe more than once. Yes,
Yeah.
depending. Yeah, maybe more than once. Of course, John 14:15. One of the ways that we, I guess you could say, if you want a proof, John 14. He says, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments." Primarily, it says "you will" in the margin. So, if you love me, keep my commandments. But if you love me, you will keep my commandments. So, if we're not keeping the commandments of God, if that is not important in our life, then we have to question: do we really love God? Do we really love you? Do we really love Jesus Christ? If we are not willing to keep His Sabbath, and that's the calling that we have, and we're not willing to do that, can we honestly say, I love Christ? And when Christ comes to us and says, do you love me? Can we honestly say, yes, Lord, I love you?
So we prove it by actions.
We prove it by our actions.
We were talking about I guess you had counseled some folks for baptism. So I think before baptism, you have to answer that question there at baptism, I would think. That's the biggest point. Do you actually love Christ to forsake everything else?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
to enter
you
baptism.
know,
And
like I explained to them, and why it's scary for some of them, it is a covenant. And God promises to do several things for us. First of all, He promises to forgive us our sins. He promises to eventually give us eternal life. He promises to help us through this life. But then He says, I want something from you. I want you to keep my commandments. I want you to do those things that are right in my sight. I want you to obey me. And that scares people.
Yep.
And so some people don't want to go that far. But it is a covenant relationship. Revelation 12, verse 11.
to Revelation 12, verse 11.
Verse 11, I love it. Revelation 12, verse 11. One of my favorite scriptures. This is the description of what happens when you battle the evil one. This is how you overcome him. And you guys are much faster at turning your pages than I am. So here we go. Revelation chapter 12, verse 11. Again, this is talking about how to overcome Satan, how to overcome the world. And it says they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives to the death. So, by the blood of the Lamb, we all know what that is. It's accepting Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior, accepting His blood to cover us and free us from sin, and just accepting the promise that God has given us and believing it, believing that promise, believing that our sins are forgiven, and living our lives accordingly. That's all part of that. That's part of the baptism agreement. That Jesus died for us and that we've accepted that.
So can I ask a question?
Sure.
When Christ asked Peter, "Do you love me?" Do you think Peter, and he said, "Yes, I do. I love you." Do you think Peter had any idea of what that would entail eventually?
No, but Christ warned him. We'll get to that a little bit later.
Sorry.
But Christ did warn him that it would entail some problems. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that is the starting point for us. The blood of Jesus Christ covering us, and that's what the starting point for them was. But then notice, by the word of their testimony. What does that mean? That means by what they said, but also by what they did. Yeah. It's their testimony. It's how our testimony is how we live in Christ, how we function, and whether we believe. You know, God says, what there in Hebrews 11, He says, "They come to me must believe that I am, and that I am the rewarder of those who diligently seek Him." Mm-hmm. So by our testimony, we overcome this world. by our testimony of our witness to the world and the way we live. And then the third one, and that's the scary one, but that's the ultimate. It says, and they did not love their lives to the death. Serving Jesus Christ, serving God, having a relationship with God the Father and Jesus Christ the Son is more important than anything else we can do.
Yep.
That's life itself. That is the most important thing we can do. And he says, you know, he who would love his life loses it. He who loses it will save it, because that's what's important. They did not love their lives to death. I think that, to me, that's one of the very powerful scriptures of the Word.
Mm-hmm.
John 20, verse 18. And I'm thinking that is supposed to be John 21. Excuse me, I wrote down the wrong scripture. John 21.
Oh, yeah.
And this answers that question that you asked.
Okay, great.
Okay. If I ever get there. Okay. John 21, verse 18. After Jesus told him, feed my sheep, he says, most assuredly I say to you, when you were younger, you girded yourself and walked where you wished. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will gird you and will carry you where you do not wish to go. Now, generally, we think of this as, you know, what Peter suffered in his later life. Mm-hmm. But it's more important to that. It's telling him that if he continues in this walk, he's going to do God's will, not his own will. Mm-hmm. This is God's will that will lead him to doing the things he's going to do. I didn't know I was going to be a pastor all my young life. You know, I didn't become a pastor until I turned, you know, in my late 50s. And I had no idea. But I do know that God led me from my early 20s. Mm-hmm. When I went to him and I asked him to guide and direct me, I didn't know where it would take me. But I did ask him to guide and direct me, so I've learned to follow where he's led. And that's what Christ is saying, telling Peter here. You will go where I lead you. You won't go where you want to go necessarily. You'll go where I tell you to go. Okay, and that's
different than I've thought about it, because I thought about he would be led where he didn't want to go because he would be persecuted because he'd be following God.
And that's in there too, but that's not the only meaning of this.
Sure.
But you'll go. In other words, we want to go our own way in life. Right. But Christ says, no. This is the way I think the way to go. Walk in my laws and my word, and the love that He expects of us to show, which is like we want to walk this way. But He's saying we go to walk.
I want to walk the easy walk.
Yeah, the easy walk.
Right in. But that's not necessarily.
Well, we don't choose the hard way, do we? Naturally.
Notice he goes on here, and Peter turns around and looks at probably John, I assume, back here behind him. And he says, what about this one? Mm-hmm. And let's see, what does it say? Peter, seeing him, said to Jesus, but Lord, what about this man? This is verse 21. And Jesus said to him, if I will that he remain till I come, what is that to you? Follow me. He doesn't say he's going to remain, but he says, if I will. What is important is what I tell you to do. Follow me.
So that real question about do you love me is individual for each of us.
Individual for each one of us. Do we love him enough to follow him the way he leads us? Do we love him enough to quit give up our jobs if that means the difference between keeping the Sabbath and feeding our family? If we think that's the difference and we have to make that decision. And Jesus says, follow me. Mm-hmm. Didn't say follow you. So it's a totally different light. And he says, what's it to you how I deal with somebody else? There's a scripture that says, unto your own master you obey, or let's see, what is that? Paul writes that, but I don't remember where it is. But anyway, under your own master. It doesn't matter to us how he deals with you. It doesn't matter to me how he deals with you. Mm-hmm. I mean, I hope he loves you.
Right.
And deals with you according to your needs.
Right.
And the same way with you. You know, he gives one person a rich family, he gives another person, you know, a life of no family. Having
Yeah.
to, but each one of us has to deal with God as he leads us.
And we can't cry and
No.
be complaining about what we
No.
have been dealt.
You know, we can't, you know, complain about Joe over there having a motorboat and we're not getting one.
Yeah. And we got a row, and we got a
Yeah.
paddle boat.
We got a
right?
paddle boat. He says,
Yeah.
"Follow me." Doesn't matter, you know, if it, you know.
That
what
could
is
be
it
that
to
way
you?
with trials too. Is why do I have to suffer so much?
Of course, the problem with that is we generally don't see the other person suffering.
Ah.
We generally, you know,
Yeah.
we don't realize how much they're suffering,
Uh-huh.
and we don't often see that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look at Romans 2:13. Romans 2:13. Because this is one of the keys. Romans 2, verse 13. For not the hearers of the law are just in the sight of God, but the doers of the law will be justified. It has to do with our actions. It has to do with how we live, with how we follow Christ, with obeying the laws of God, with actually not just hearing the law, but doing it. You know, the question, one of the big questions I've heard a number of times is, why doesn't God, you know, we see some people who maybe go to church on Sunday and we see that they're very good people. And yet, God has called us to the Sabbath. Can we turn back from the Sabbath? No, we
No.
can't. Just because, and I'm not accusing, you know, we can't judge that person that God is dealing with. He says he has other sheep of the flock that is not his. So we can't judge what he's doing with them. All we can do is judge what he's doing with us. And the understanding that he's given us is more important. And we cannot turn our backs on that. We've got to be doers of the word, doers of what God has given us.
And we have to stand before Him with that clear conscience, don't we?
Right. We can't, you know. And we have one of the new people that just come in, and he's come in understanding the Sabbath and the holy days. He's come in with a full knowledge of everything, and he read one of my articles and started attending church. But that's the question he has. He's beginning to see the separation between his family, and they don't understand why he quit going to church on Sunday and why he's going to church on Saturday, and he doesn't understand it either. He doesn't understand why they can't see what he's seeing. That God has called us to a certain walk. And interesting side note, I know the pastor of the church he used to go to, and he asked me about him the other day, and I said, well, he's attending us now, but not my fault.
All right.
But yeah, it's interesting. You know, God has called us to a certain position. First John 4. This leads on as well. You know, if you don't love your brother, 1 John 4, verse 20. It says, someone says, I love God and hates his brother, he is a liar. It's pretty strong language. For he who does not love his brother whom he has seen, how can he love God whom he has not seen? You say, Jesus, yes, I love you, but you kick your brother. You're lying.
God doesn't like that.
No. And he knows you're telling the truth, and you should know you're not telling the truth too. I mean, that should be easy enough for every one of us to see. Say I love God, but I can't stand this guy over here. I hate him, and I'll do everything I can against him. That should be a warning to us.
Could that ever be used as, or could we ever violate this by not helping somebody, not
Yeah.
showing love?
Yeah, we could. God says if it's with our power to do, then we need to be doing it.
I know this is talking about a brother, so
Yeah.
But-
yeah, brother.
could be a future brother
but it
though
could
that
be,
we
yeah,
can ignore.
it could be
couldn't we?
anybody. I mean, yeah, it's primarily mentions brother, but I think it has to do with whoever we meet. as
Yeah.
well. Because, after all, you have the parable of the Good Samaritan.
Mm-hmm.
So who was his brother? His brother was the guy laying in the ditch.
Yep. Not his own countrymen.
Yeah, not his own countrymen. So, yeah, so I think, it's a broader sense. Going on in chapter 5, it says, whoever believes that Jesus is the Christ is born of God, and everyone who loves him, who begot him, also loves him who has begotten him. By this we know that we love the children of God when we love God and keep his commandments. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome. How do we know we love God? How can we say, yes, we love you? By keeping his commandments. And his commandments are not burdensome.
It's not just words.
Yeah, not just words.
Actions required.
Yeah, Matthew 10. Matthew 10, and let's look here at verse 9. Matthew 10. Let's see the contents here. Oh, yeah. And it's kind of interesting here. He sent the disciples out on I guess this was their first mission. I'm not sure whether it was the first or second mission. But anyway, one mission he sent them out with swords and with food and all kinds of stuff. This one, he says, provide neither gold nor silver nor copper in your money belts, nor bag for your journey, nor 2 tunics, nor sandals, nor staff, for a worker is worthy of his food. They were expected to go into the community and go to a house and be invited in and be able to live off that house. Now, how can you do that if you don't love the people? How can you go in there and genuinely hate who you're going to and expect to be fed by them?
Can't.
You can't. They had to go in there with the attitude of love, of concern, of dealing with their problems. So they had to be willing to show that they had concern for them. So, it's kind of an aside there, but that's an interesting point that you need to look at. They couldn't have expected to be taken care of if they went in and, oh, you're a dirty, rotten scoundrel or whatever, but I'm going to stay here anyway.
That required a lot of faith on their part.
It did. Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had to step out there with nothing.
Yeah. Here in chapter 10, over in verse 32, I think this is a scary one, if you look at it that way. Therefore, whoever confesses me before men, him I will confess before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, him I will deny before my Father who is in heaven. Peter denied Christ 3 times. And 3 times he had to convince Christ that he loved him. Do we deny Christ by our attitudes, by the way we live our life? If we don't live a life that's exemplary of Christ, then we are denying him. If we say that we are a Christian and yet live like a heathen or a Gentile, then we are denying Christ. And God says he will deny us to his Father. I think we need to take that to heart.
Pretty serious.
One last scripture.
Okay.
Let's go to Matthew chapter 25. Now, Matthew 25, this is primarily not necessarily directed to the church, I don't think, at this particular point. This is starting in verse 34. This is, I was naked and you took me in. And this is addressed to the nations, okay? And he's judging the nations, but yet it's the same, he uses the same judgment with us. Matthew 25, verse 34. Then the king will come to say to those on his right hand, come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. And the righteous will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry? When did we, feed you? When did we see you thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you as a stranger and clothed you? And he says, down in verse 40, the king will answer them, saying, assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of these least of my brethren, you did it to me. We must do it for the least of God's people. Everyone is God's people in one sense or another.
Yep.
He desires that none should perish, but all should come to the truth. We have our part in that.
Yeah.
And our part is to show compassion, to show love, not to judge. And when Jesus asks us, do you love me? We say, yes, Lord, I love you.
Yeah. Great.
Very good, very good. I have some comments here, and I'll start on Facebook. Amy Hohertz, who watches us regularly, she says, he loves us all, warts and all. We don't need to suffer in silence. We should share our burdens with one another. And she quotes Galatians 6:2, bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. And Sister with Love says she agrees with what you're saying, Wes. So that's the comments we got right so far. If anybody else has any comments, definitely please feel free to share them with us.
Yeah. Great.
All right. Well, what we'll do is we'll take a break, and we'll be back in just a moment.
So how long do we go?
The first day of the week, Sunday, is commonly accepted as the Lord's Day. It's also called the Christian Sabbath. But does the Bible really say that the seventh-day Sabbath was transferred from the seventh day of the week to the first day of the week? And was the Old Testament Sabbath law nailed to the cross? Also, does the New Testament instruct Christians to keep Sunday? Chances are you're having trouble reconciling Sunday worship with God's command to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. At CGI.org, we have a booklet on the subject of the Sabbath. This publication may be helpful if you want to know what the Bible really teaches about it. Or perhaps you know someone who could benefit from learning God's truth regarding the seventh-day Sabbath. The title of the booklet is Understanding the Sabbath Day. It's free. Why don't you check it out? Again, it's on our website, cgi.org, and there is no charge. Once again, Understanding the Sabbath Day. Check it out.
Hey, thanks for joining us again on Bring on the Sabbath. It is now, I guess it looks like the sun has went down here in Tyler, maybe in the next couple of minutes.
Yep.
So we have brought on the Sabbath here. We thank Wes for being here tonight, for sharing us with that
Thank
Bible
you.
study. Very, very thought-provoking, of our love for Christ, and do we love Him? So we want everybody to tune in tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Wes will be giving a sermon. Doesn't know what it is yet, but I'm sure he will know tomorrow at 11. It's going to be a wonderful sermon, I guarantee it. So tune in at 11 o'clock tomorrow for our Sabbath services. Again, we thank you for joining us. So you have a great, happy Sabbath. Happy Sabbath,
Night,
y'all.
everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.